Hello, welcome to another video by me, Mr. Johnson, on using processing to create weird and wonderful things. Java is a really kind of, I don't know, a language that is really brought to life by processing, and I really enjoy programming it, and I hope you do too. This is to be used as like a jumping off point, so I'm going to try and program today an endless tunnel in which we feel like we're kind of constantly going through a kind of repeating tunnel, and how we can do that in kind of quite a simple code. And hopefully that will give you kind of inspiration to take this and do something more impressive with it and build on it. Okay, so hopefully this should be the kind of building blocks of something that you can create yourself. So without further ado, let's get into it. So I am going to grab processing and just chuck it on one side of my screen. I've already saved this project as Endless Tunnel. You can obviously save this as whatever you'd like. And we're just going to get our setup function in, which is where all of the code that's run once at the start will go. And we're going to put in our draw loop, which is going to be run 60 times a second. Or it's going to try and run it 60 times a second as standard. And this will be run once at startup, which makes sense, called setup. Okay, so what do we want to do? Well, let's draw a canvas. So let's say size, and let's do something simple at the moment. Let's do 400, 600 maybe. And let's just draw in a background. Now I'm going to draw in a black background because I think it tends to look better, easier on the eyes. So if I hit play, we can see there we've got a black box. Huzzah! Great. Okay, let's do something with our black box. So what I would like to do is I would like to draw a rectangle, and the draw loop is a really nice way just to prototype something and get it going. So let's just prototype a rectangle. Let's make a global variable and let's make it a float, and we're going to call it W for width, and we're going to set that equal to 1. Okay, and then we're just going to draw a rectangle at width over 2, so in the middle of the canvas, height over 2, dead in the middle, and then it's going to be width wide and width long. So as coordinates go up at the top of the box, up there in the corner, where my arrow is 0, 0, and then if we go all the way along here, that's width, however long width is. Now we've told it to be 400, but obviously we could change that, and so it's much better to use the variable name width rather than the actual number 400. And the same for the height, so we've come down from 0 up here down to 600, which is down here at the bottom, and that is what our height is, and it's represented by the variable height. So if we do half of 400 is 200, so we end up here, and half of 600 is 300, so we end up smack bang in the middle. So we're going to draw a rectangle in the middle. Now let's just see that in action. Okay, it's not drawn anything. Let's do no fill because we don't want it to have anything in, and we're going to have a stroke of 255 to be white, and we're going to also just think about the stroke weight as well, if I can spell it. And let's make that something like 3 for now. And let's see, do we get anything? Yeah, so we get a little square in the middle there, tiny little square. Now, if I draw it bigger, let's make width 100, say. Okay, you will notice that it's not quite in the centre, and that is because it is being drawn from the top left corner outwards. And so, actually, the centre point is where the kind of top left corner of this square is, or yeah, of this square. But we want the square to be actually the middle point of the square to be in the middle of the canvas. And so this is a thing that is in processing. It's called the rectangle mode. And currently the rectangle mode by default is set to corner. And what that means is it's going to draw the rectangle from the corner. The coordinates you give it, it's going to draw it out from the corner. Now we can change this in setup. And we can say rect mode. Oh, might. And we can use the constant center to tell it that we want the rectangle to be drawn from the center. So whatever coordinates we give it, that's where we want the center of the rectangle to be, not the top left corner. And now when I press play, I've not done anything else but just change the rect mode. Now when I press play, we can see that the square is nice and in the middle of the of the canvas. Okay, so that is nicely positioned, and that's what rect mode does. So we've got this positioned now. Now what I'd like it to do is I'd like it to grow over time, and let's just see this draw loop in action. So let's put our width back to 1, and then let's say, we're going to say W equals, or W plus equals, so W adds onto yourself 1. So every time we go through the draw loop, we should see it getting bigger, and you can see there it expanding, and it's getting bigger and bigger. Now, the bigger it gets, the slower it seems to move. It started off getting quite big quite quickly. One way I'd like to kind of make this look a bit more interesting, the way it moves. At the moment it's very linear. It's just like going up by 1 each time. What I'd like to do is I'd like to take percentage of its overall width, and that will create quite an interesting effect. So let's, instead of adding 1, let's add W divided by, let's say, 10. Okay, so when it first starts, we'll be adding like 0.1 onto 1, and then 0.12 onto it. But as we get bigger and bigger and bigger, it will start adding more and more, and it will seem to have this kind of zoom effect where it starts quite far away and starts quite slowly, and then when it gets up close to you, it kind of zooms by you. So let's have a look at that. Whoa, can you see that? You can see that? It's really slow to start with, and then poof, it's off. Let's try doing it with divided by 100 and slow that down a bit. Let's see. So you can see there it is taking ages to grow now, and then it very quickly kind of ramps up and gets faster and faster and faster and faster, and then it kind of zooms up. Now that divided by 100 is a little bit slow, so let's stick at 10 and let's just see that again. So, lovely. Okay, I think that's really cool. So we've got our rectangle there. Now we want to detect when it has gone off the screen, and then we want to draw it again. And also we want to kind of, what I want to do to make this tunnel, I want to have a rectangle come at you, and then I want to have a circle come at you. And the best way to do this really would be to put these into an object. So let's make or a class, sorry. So let's make our own data type. So we've got a float up here, which is a floating point number, so a decimal number. But we can make our own data types as well. So I'm going to make a data type, and I'm going to call it tunnel. Okay. And we're going to say class tunnel. And when we make a tunnel, what are we going to do? Well, we are going to do all of this setup code. So rect mode, that can go when we make a tunnel. We can grab all of this, no fill, stroke, weight, stroke. That can all go in here just for now. And we can, if there's somewhere more appropriate later, we can always take it from here. So when we make a tunnel, we're going to do that. We're going to have the width, so we're going to have that float W. Let's put that in, assign it to the tunnel, so it's not global. So setup, we're going to have a tunnel, tunnel, and we're going to say tunnel is equal to a new tunnel. So the class is like a blueprint, a cookie cutter, if you will, and we can generate as many tunnels as we like using this cookie cutter, because we can just say, give me a new one, give me a new one, give me a new one, and it will just keep making us new tunnels. And it's a bit of a weird, like, abstract concept to get your head around, but when you get it, it kind of starts to make sense. So we've got this class tunnel, we make a new tunnel, and then down here, we're just going to say tunnel.display. And we need to write a function that does that. Now let's cut this out. And okay, in here we need to have void display, because I've said in the code that I want it to display. But if I run this now, it's just going to be like, what do you mean display? I don't know how to display. So we have to tell it how to display. So the way you display is that you are going to draw your rectangle, and you're going to draw your... Okay, so we're going to do two things. We're going to draw a rectangle and we're going to draw a circle. Now, in order for me to draw both, I need to be capturing the width of both and kind of looking at the width of both of them. So instead of just having this float W at the top, really what I need to do is I need to have something like rect width. And I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to have circle. So I'm going to use a rectangle and a circle just to give it some kind of variety in my tunnel. And what we're going to do is we're going to say we're also going to have some booleans, I think. You can never have too many booleans, I always say. So we're going to have boolean rect exists equals true. True. And we're going to have boolean circle exists equal to false. Okay, and then we can just manage how our kind of rectangle and circles, whether they're on the canvas or not. So we're going to display our rectangle at width over 2, height over 2, WW. Instead of WW now, we're going to say this dot rectangle width or rect width. So let's put that there and copy that and pop that there. And then we're also going to change this to this dot rect width. This dot rect width over 10. Okay, so I'm going to take this and I'm going to make a new function called void draw rectangle. This will just make it a lot simpler in my display function rather than having loads of crazy code. So I've got my rect function there. I'm updating its width. Okay, so I can have my draw rectangle function and I can run that and it will run the code inside here. I'm also going to do exactly the same for drawing a circle. So let's copy that, paste it down here and just change out the necessary bits. So this is going to be draw circle. I'm going to draw a circle at width over 2, height over 2, this dot circle width. And because it's a circle, I only need to give it one width and it will take care of the rest. And then this dot circle width is going to be increased. And I'm going to increase it by the same amount as this dot rect width. So we've actually got this 10 twice here. And so actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to store it up here. So I'm going to say, let's say float increment. No, let's make it an integer. Int increment equals 10, and I'm going to say divided by this dot increment. And that just means that if I want to kind of play with this and experiment with it, I just change it in one place and it's right at the top. It's really easy to find and it's much more tidier that way. And that's the really nice thing about processing is you can make something and then you can just tweak everything and you can like really play around with it. So yeah, it's good fun. So having these at the top and having them kind of pulled out of the code so that you can quickly update them is really important. So here we've got all of this stuff. So we've set the rect mode. Now I want to do all of this every time I draw a rectangle. And oh dear, my alignment is so off. Okay. There we go. It's getting back to, I think I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm zoomed over a little bit. Okay, and I'm going to do the same for circle, but I need to do one other thing for circle. Sorry, it's going to drive me mad otherwise. I need to do one other thing for circle. I need to just do ellipse mode. So we need to tell it, just like the rectangle that we're drawing it in the center, we're going to draw the circle in the center. Now, I'm pretty sure, as standard, the circle is centered to start with, rather than compared to rect mode, which was started in the corner. But I'm just going to do it anyway as best practice. So that will be that. In fact, it's probably even better practice, really, to do it every time we draw it, is it? Not in this sketch. Well, let's leave it there. Let's leave it there. Okay, cool. So let's hit play, and probably nothing's changed. Hopefully it works. Yeah, cool, and we've got our square going. Okay, but now we can start to do interesting things. Let's just make sure our circle is going as well. So I'm going to comment out draw rectangle and just make sure our draw circle function works. Really, this should be this dot, draw circle. And let's see that in action. Oosh. Okay, great. So we've got a circle and a rectangle being drawn, and we are monitoring their coordinates. Now let's do something interesting with them. So I'm going to draw my rectangle, and I'm going to check to see whether my rectangle size, my rectangle is a certain size. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to add in a integer called threshold, and I'm going to set it equal to 10, just to start with, just to play with, and I'm going to say if this dot rect, what did I call it? Rect size, rect width is greater than this dot threshold, then I'm going to say that my circle can be drawn. So I'm going to say circle exists equals true. So I'm going to turn my circle on. So this dot circle exists equals true. Now what this is going to do is allow me to say if this dot circle exists, then I'm going to draw circle. And I'm going to do the same around my rectangle. So I'm going to say if this dot rectangle, is it rectangle? Rect exists. Did I mistype something down here? Circle, yeah, circle. If this rectangle, rect exists, I've got the memory of a goldfish. Rect exists, yeah. If this dot rect exists, then we're going to draw our rectangle. So it's going to be only drawn if we are telling it, if we're turning it on in our code by using this rect exists. So we start with rect existing, it is true, so that will be drawn, but circle will not be drawn until rect width is greater than this dot threshold. Okay, and we are going to do the same for the circle width in a second. Let's put that in now as well. So let's copy that. So we're going to say if this dot circle width is greater than this dot threshold, then this dot rect exists equals true. Okay, so we've got a way to turn on and off our rectangle and our circle. Now, well, no, actually, we've got a way to turn them on. We need a way to turn them off as well. So we need to be able to turn it off, and to do that, we need to be able to reset them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say if cool. So up here, let's do it up here. Let's say if this dot rect width is greater than, let's do the height. Let's do width times 2. If this dot rect width is greater than width times 2, then we are going to say this dot rect width equals 1, and this dot rect exists equals false. So we're going to turn the rectangle off once it gets to a certain size so that it can reset itself and be drawn again. And then we're just going to do the same down here. So we're going to say if this dot rect, we're going to copy this, and we're just going to do the same but for circles. So when we draw the circle, after we do that, we're going to do this. So if circle width is greater than width times 2, then this dot circle width and this dot circle exists. Okay, let's just check I've got all my semicolons and it's working, and let's see what we get. Look at that! Fantastic. Okay, I think we just need to tweak the threshold a little bit, but can you see how this is just like constantly, you're just kind of constantly zooming down this tunnel, which is really cool. Now, I want to just make my canvas maybe a little bit bigger as well. I want to turn the stroke weight down. So let's make that a global variable. So I love a property of a class. So these are all called properties up here. and they are the kind of the data that is attached to the class, and then we have all these methods down here. A method is just some functionality that you can get the class to do, such as drawing a circle or drawing a rectangle. So I'm going to say integer thickness, should we say, equals 1, and I'm just going to draw them at this dot thickness. Now you'll notice that there's a lot of code that I've duplicated in that last section that we wrote, and this could be solved in a much more clever way, because we're essentially just doing the same thing, but one for a circle, one for a rectangle, and so I could think of it in a much more kind of well thought out way. But I just want to kind of get the fundamentals of programming in, and really kind of get used to working with ifs and conditionals and those kind of things. So I'm not too worried about these being inefficient, but maybe I could have put these ifs together in a bit more of a thoughtful way. Now the thickness is 1, let's just have a look at that. Yeah, that's much better. So it's kind of like it's constantly spawning. Now, one thing it is missing, I think, is if we just were to draw a point right in the middle so it looked like they were always coming from somewhere. So what I'd like to do is every time we display, I'd like to draw a point at width over 2 and height over 2. And I'd like to say stroke weight. Oh, let's say 3. No, let's say 2. And now we should get this side. You see that little dot? That just makes all the difference. It just really like draws you in and just makes you feel like you're kind of going down a tunnel and there's a light at the end of the tunnel. So we are zooming now. We are absolutely zooming, and you can see that because of this threshold here, this is how we are kind of controlling when the next shape should be made. And because I've got this like interesting increment where I'm doing I'm dividing the width of my rectangle by 10 and adding it onto itself, we get this kind of acceleration, which is a really kind of interesting looking thing. Whereas if we were to be adding 1, it'd be a much duller animation. So let's play with this threshold now. What if I was to do it at 20? What kind of things would I get there? Okay, it's not as much has changed as I thought it would. Maybe that's because I need to kind of be a bit more drastic. Let's do 100. Okay, yeah, so you can see that it's a much slower tunnel there. Can you see that we're just kind of zooming a bit slower? It just feels a bit less manic. But if I was to drop this right down to maybe like 3, I'm scared to do 1. We could, yeah, okay, so we get dudoosh, dudoosh. Okay, and so actually they're not kind of evenly spaced. We'd have to maybe add more rectangles, more circles in, and think about how we could be drawing those at different times as well. So you can add to this, of course. You could maybe be drawing more rectangles. You could be drawing more circles. You could add a triangle or some other shapes into the mix to make this more interesting. But I'm going to stick with just my square and my circle and let you make those improvements. So back to 10, we can see that. And we can change this increment as well, and we can kind of play around with its speed. So if I change it down to 5, whoa, we are zooming through that, okay? And if I change, so that's how fast it's speeding up, okay? The threshold is the kind of spacing between them, so I can change how far apart they are. So if I change the threshold to like 200, I've got the kind of the space between them. That's quite cool. And then I've got the increment, which is the speed. And the lower the increment, the faster the speed, I think. So if I was to do increment equals 1, would that break everything? Whoa! Okay, that is off the chain. Okay, that's maybe a little bit too fast. Let's do 3. Okay, yeah, so we're probably like zooming down this tunnel. What would be really interesting as well, actually, is maybe if I was to draw some kind of lines down here, maybe like we're on a train, so like a railway track. So let's do that. Let's put in some kind of lines as if we were in a train and we're zooming down a endless tunnel. So my lines are going to converge in the middle here. Oh my lord, I need to slow this down. It's going to break my brain. Okay, increment is 20. There we go. Nice and slow. The train has slowed down, and we can take a minute to think about what we're doing. So So we're going to draw 2 lines. They're going to start from the middle and then they're just going to come down slightly towards the bottom. So what we're going to do is maybe make a new... So here we've got draw point. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to make a this dot, what should we call it, draw track. You'll notice that I've been using camel case, which is every word starts lowercase, but every other word starts uppercase. So draw is lowercase, but every word after it starts uppercase. But my properties all have spaces between them, or underscores. So I can tell whether something's a property or a method really easily because of the way that I'm writing them, which is really important when you're programming. It's really important to have a style and stick to it so that you get used to it and people that are reading your code can get used to it as well. So we've got draw rectangle, draw circle. Let's also have void draw track, which is what I think I just called this, hopefully. Draw track, yeah. So the first thing we do when we draw a track is we draw the point right at the end, and then we're going to draw a line which is going to go from width over 2, height over 2, that's going to be its starting position, and then we're going to go all the way down to height. So that's going to be our last number, but the x position is going to be something like, let's do width over 2 minus 10. And let's copy this and let's draw another line, but instead of doing width over 2 minus 10, we'll do width over 2 plus 10. Now, because of BODMAS, okay, I don't need to put any brackets in here because the computer will do the division before it does the subtraction or the addition, so we should be fine there. So hopefully now I'm drawing a line from the point in the middle all the way down to here, so let's see that in action. Okay, lovely. So I don't think they're spaced apart quite how I wanted them to be. They're a little bit thin, a little bit on the thin side. So let's try and raise them up and kind of get a bit more perspective in this. So let's be a bit more thoughtful here. Maybe if I can just widen them. Change that to 30. Yeah, we're kind of getting somewhere. I don't. Okay, I've got stroke weight 2 here. Let's copy that and let's pop it down here and make that just 1 for my lines for my track. Okay, cool. And then let's just space them out a little further. So let's do minus, I don't know, 80. Just play with the numbers, see what we get. Okay, that looks much more like a train track. This is much better. Okay, great. One thing that would be really good actually is if we could fill this. So instead of drawing a line, why don't we draw a triangle? That would be so much better. Okay, so we'll draw a triangle, we'll fill the triangle, and then the line of the tunnel won't come underneath the triangle, and it'll look much more like a train track. So let's grab this point. We're going to draw this last, and we're going to draw a triangle. Now I'm going to leave these lines for the time being because I want to. What do I want to do? I want to copy their coordinates. I'm going to fill this with black. It's going to have a white stroke, white outline, and we're going to draw a triangle. So its first point is going to be at width over 2, height over 2. Okay. Second point is going to be at width over 2 minus 80 height. And its third point is going to be at width over 2 add 80 height. And that is how we're going to draw a triangle. How easy was that? I've never drawn a triangle that easily in processing. That is a breakthrough method. Okay, so hopefully... Oh, it doesn't like it. What do you like? Oh, okay, semicolon. There we go. Okay, so if I hit play now, we should see a triangle... but they're being drawn over the top of it. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to draw our track last. So at the moment, down in display, I'm drawing the track before I'm drawing anything else. So I'm going to take that, just going to cut it, and this is just a simple order of operations thing. And in programming, the order that you do something in is often really important. And so I'm going to just pop this down here right at the bottom, this dot draw track, and now I get this actual... Look at that. Okay, now I'm actually on a railway. This is so exciting. This is really cool. Okay, let's do one more thing. to make this just look a little bit more crazy, and then I'll just leave it to you and to see what you can come up with. I'm already really digging this. I think if we speed this up a little bit, the effect will be much more pronounced. One thing I would like to do as well is make the point a little bit bigger. So down here, I'm going to make the stroke weight like 5, and just want that the light at the end of the tunnel just to be a little bit bigger. There we go. So you can see that the light of the tunnel is at the end of the tunnel is there. If I was wanting to take this to the next level, I might start thinking about drawing lines across the track to make it look more like a track. But I think then you'd have to start moving them downwards, and that would be really interesting, actually. But I'm not going to do it now. What I'm going to do is I want to add some kind of otherworldly feeling to this. So what I want to do is I want to take this square and I want to just make it feel like we're maybe in a just do something simple, but I think it'll be really effective. So what we're going to do is we're going to rotate the square. So when we draw the rectangle here, we are going to come down here and we're going to say push matrix. And after we draw the rectangle, we're going to say pop matrix. Now what push matrix does is it saves everything that's happening on the canvas, okay? And then what pop matrix does is it pulls everything back that it saved earlier and puts it back on the canvas. So we can kind of come outside of everything that's happening, we can do something really weird and wonderful, and then we can put it all back. And this is the most kind of effective way of doing a rotation. And so once I've pushed my matrix, I need to translate to the middle of the screen, so where I want to draw the rectangle. So what translate does is it takes wherever 0, 0 is, which by default is up here at the top left-hand corner of the screen, and it moves it to whatever coordinate you've given it. So I've told it that it needs to translate 0, 0 into the middle of the screen, width over 2, height over 2. So it translates it over here. We're then going to draw our rectangle at 0, 0, because 0, 0 is now in the middle of the screen. The last thing we're going to do, no, sorry, not the last thing, but the last thing for this rotation is do a rotate. Now, processing uses radians rather than degrees. Oh, what's a radian? I don't know. It's a radian is a kind of an amount of pi. I think you can go up to 2 pi, and that's equal to 360 degrees. I'm no maths teacher, and will be the first to say that I don't fully understand it. But what I do know is, sorry, just plugging my computer in. What I do know is that we need to convert our degrees to radians if we are working in degrees, which I'm going to do just for the sake of it. So I'm going to, not radian, radians, plural. So we're going to convert into radians. So we use the radians function to take an integer and convert it into radians. So we're going to have a rotation. So let's just call this, let's store it up here. So let's do float, rect, rotation. Can you see that I've kept everything as rect? It's really important. Like rect width, rect exists. So I know that, did I call it rectangle? Oh, that one I called rectan. It just makes it a lot more simple that I'm kind of sticking to this idea. So I'm going to use this dot rect rotation in here. And we're going to rotate that many degrees. And then down here, when we add this to that, we're also going to say this dot rect rotation plus equals 1. That's a little bit less. Let's do plus equals 20. Okay, let's see what we get. Oh, that's so fast. That's too fast. That's too fast. That's much too fast. Okay, I really thought that would be much slower. Let's do plus equals 1 and see where we go with that. Okay. Now we're kind of spinning around. This is really cool. So now let's start playing with the speed. We've got some rotation going on. We've got train tracks, and we are really feeling. Although we're using some very basic shapes, very basic colours, there is this slight feeling of kind of moving down a tunnel, and I think that will be increased when we up these numbers. So I'm going to put them back to 10 and 10 because I seem to remember them being a fairly good combo. Yeah, so you can see that the square actually isn't having much time to rotate when it is moving that fast. Okay, and that's what I was expecting to happen when I did the rotation earlier, that I'd need to use a much bigger number. But actually it's quite nice because it comes back and it's kind of still rotating, and it kind of starts in a different position every time. And this is really cool. I really dig this. There is so much you could do with this, and one tiny little thing I want to do before I go is I just want to add some alpha and see if we can get this looking a bit more like with speed lines and blur lines and that kind of thing. So let's go over to our draw. Instead of drawing a background, what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a rectangle that will be our background color. So well, not instead of, but as well as. So I'm going to draw a rect. It's going to go from 0, 0, so top left corner. I know we translated earlier, but we popped the matrix and put everything back. So 0, 0 went back to the top left. And it's going to go all the way over to width, and it's going to come all the way down to height. And that is going to be our rect. Now we're going to fill that rectangle with black, black, black. But we're going to give it a fourth value. So this is an RGB colour, 0, 0, 0, 0 red, 0 green, 0 blue. But we're going to give it a fourth colour, which will be the amount of alpha and how transparent it is. Now this is going to just make everything look a lot crazier. I'm going to start with maybe 100 alpha. 255 would mean that it is not see-through at all. 100 means it's about half see-through. What I also need to do is just do no stroke. Now you'll notice that I was very careful earlier when I'm drawing the track, when I'm drawing my rectangle, when I'm drawing my circle. I'm telling them exactly, don't draw a stroke, or if you do draw a stroke, draw it here, draw this stroke weight, draw it this fill. And this is because I can come back over here and I can do no stroke, and I know it won't affect anything else because I'm going to change it when I go to draw it. And so I'm being really kind of redundant sometimes when I'm writing this code, but it makes it easier in the future. So if we run this should allow us to get this kind of blur coming from our shapes, and it should look really interesting. Let's have a look. Okay, I think I might need to get rid of backgrounds. Let's get rid of that. Okay, rect mode is in center, and so I've drawn the rectangle in a really odd place, and so it's not working as I expected. So what I need to do is every time I draw this rectangle, I need to change the rect mode back to corner. So I'm going to say, or do I? Could I draw it in a more thoughtful way? Yeah, I can draw it in a more thoughtful way. So I'm going to draw it at width over 2, height over 2, and it's going to be width, wide, and height tool. Okay, this should work much better. Lovely. Okay, and we've got this little blurring. Okay, might be hard to see. You might kind of get it, but you can see this kind of blur, and this adds to the feeling that we're actually traveling, that we're actually moving. We're getting some kind of motion blur. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to decrease the alpha. I'm going to half it to 50, and you should notice much more blur. Yeah, can you see that? Kind of warping through this tunnel now. Now, I created the illusion of having a lot more shapes than I've actually got. I'm only drawing 2 shapes, but I've created the illusion of more by using this alpha channel. And it's really cool. I really like that. And so you can play with the amount of alpha in order to get the kind of more blur. So there's 25, look at that. Okay, can you see how when it's twisting you get that really nice kind of those lines coming through? That's awesome. That's really cool. Okay, so this is much more like a tunnel now. Now the speed of which these are kind of moving is maybe not quite so good, and so we could be more thoughtful about the threshold and the increment that we're using. So maybe if I was to think about this, let's put some comments in here. So the increment is what is it? The increment is how fast it grows, how fast shapes grow, and the threshold is how far apart the shapes are, how far apart shapes are. Less is faster, more is further. So if I did threshold 200, okay, that's more kind of like a tunnel kind of thing. Maybe drop it to 100. Get them just a little bit closer. Yeah, that's quite cool. Okay, and then we can kind of play with our increments to kind of speed this up and slow it down. But they'll still stay the same distance apart in pixels, but they'll just get faster and faster. And so we're kind of traveling. That's really cool. And you can see there actually that because they're jumping so far towards the end, the lines, the remnants of kind of what's being drawn are so far spaced apart compared to their earlier ones where they're very, very close together. Now what I'd like to do actually is I would like to... No, I won't... Yeah, let's just put in a little bit of visual effects as well. So let's say that their colour will be related to how big they are. So the bigger they are, the brighter their colour will be. So I'm going to say that my stroke is 255, so I'm going to say float, oh my lord, float colour, spelt the British way, float colour equals, I don't care what it's called. No, it is important that I spelt it the British way because the American way, colour, is actually a reserved word in processing, so we have to spell it right in order to be able to use it as a variable name, which is great. So we're going to map, what we're going to map? We're going to map this dot circle width, and we're going to take what it can be between. So circle width can be between, we're going to say 0, well is it 1? Do we always reset it to 1? Yeah. 1, it can be between 1 and it can go up to width times 2. That's our kind of boundary for when we reset it. And we're going to map that from between, let's say, 50 and 255. And so the colour of this will be affected by how big it is. So it'll start off very dark because it's far away, and then it'll get brighter as it gets closer. So let's do this and put in colour instead of 255, and we can do the same for our rectangle as well. So, ooh, don't want to cut that, I want to copy it. Let's go to draw rectangle, and where do we have stroke here? So let's pop that there, and instead of this dot circle dot width, we just need to replace that with this dot rect width. Okay, so now if we hit play, we now have, look at that, that's much better. I think the threshold might just be a little bit too dark, so let's come down here. Now, I've not done this very thoughtfully, could have put this in a better position, but instead of 50,255, I'm going to do 100,255. I'm just going to make the minimum darkness it can be a bit brighter, just so that we can see it a bit better. So if I hit play there, okay, that's lovely. Great, fantastic. I'm going to slow this down a little bit. It's a little bit intense. So how fast do shapes grow? Let's do 20. Look at this. This is so cool with the spiraling square as well. And then lastly, let's just whack this in full screen. So I'm going to hide size, and we'll do full screen. Oh, if I can spell. Full and then capital S, full screen. Here we go. Oh, my laptop is not liking doing this. Okay, that's one downside to doing it full screen. There are a lot more pixels to be processing, but look at this. This is so cool. This is our little endless tunnel animation, having these shapes constantly be recycled and coming at us again and again and again. I'd love to see how you can take this and make it something your own, make your own kind of thing out of this, maybe use colour more effectively, maybe make it look more like a train that you're travelling down, maybe make the sides of the tunnel look more pronounced, and you might have some kind of landmarks that you pass. There could be loads of stuff that you do with this, and I'd be really, really interested to see what you do. This is going to do it for me. I've waffled on way too long about this. I'm sure you're wanting to. I'm sure you're wanting this video to end, so I will promptly end it now. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to watch this. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next video. Sweet.